We're in day 4 of the war. This is a very, very challenging time. Last night in Israel, all throughout the country, there were very, very significant hits in terms of not only loss of life, of injuries, but also literally buildings collapsing. It's a very, very challenging time. On the other hand, the success of the Israeli Air Force, the success of the IDF has been incredibly significant. But we're in the middle of something that looks like it is going to go weeks, not necessarily days. And we've brought in an incredible friend of FIDF, an incredible mentor to FIDF, and that is Ari Sacher. Many of you have always responded in terms of Ari Sacher's briefings that have taken place before the war, during the war. Ari, as you know, is one of the executives at RAFAEL, is involved in the whole missile defense system, not only as a scientist, but as a leader, as a mentor. And one thing that's unique about Ari is that much of the funding that comes from missile defense, coming through the allocation of Congress, of the Senate, is something that the senators, congressmen from both parties, when they come to Israel to see in action, to learn about, whether it's Iron Dome, David Sling, it's Ari Sacher is the one that articulates, that shares with them, explains it to them. And Ari's taken out time in the middle of this war to actually share with us, to give us an insight. Ari, we can't thank you enough. We know how busy you are, but we want to thank you for sharing with us and really giving us some insight into what's happening in terms of the 4 layers of missile defense, the challenges of these incredibly powerful ballistic missiles, the drones, etc. Ari, let me hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Weil, for having me again. Hope I can bring you guys up to speed on what's going on. Thursday night, 3 o'clock in the morning, the alarm goes off. It wasn't one of these "you're under attack" alarms. It was "you might be under attack in the future, and just in case, it would be a good idea if you go into the bomb shelter." And so we did, and we watched with awe as Israel, over the course of a few hours, pretty much broke Iran's back, because what we have been fighting over the last 4 days has been a broken Iran. Israel took out most of Iran's leadership. They took out most of Iran's air defense. We were starting already with the strategic air defense that had been crippled by previous Israeli attacks. We took out the rest of it. We took out anybody we needed to take out. It turned out that the Mossad, if you can believe what you read on the international press, was fully ensconced in Iran, doing what they wanted to. Israel began to attack Iran's largest nuclear site, a nuclear uranium enrichment site in Natanz, and essentially took it out. Iran has over the last 20 years, they made a strategic error. And that strategic error was that they're going to not spend any money in a Navy, not spend any money in an Air Force, but the only way that they would project force is with ballistic missiles. And oh, by the way, on that first day, and since then, Israel has gone taking out ballistic missile factories, which is ruining their capability to make any new, produce any new ballistic missiles. And we've been picking off ballistic missile storehouses and launchers over the last 4 days. It's been tough. The Iranians have launched to date nearly 400 missiles. These are not what were being launched from our friends Hezbollah in Lebanon. Which, by the way, the fact that we took out Hezbollah in Lebanon, the fact that we broke their back over a half a year ago, is what enabled us to do what we're doing in Iran. Because had Hezbollah been the kind of power that they were, we would not have been able to go into Iran without suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous Hezbollah fortune. We would have been in bomb shelters from bad boys coming from the east and from the north. We didn't have that problem anymore. Neither do we have a problem in Syria, because in Syria that was not only was that an Iranian proxy, but also Syrian airspace was something that we could not enter. We could not enter it because of the Syrians and because of the Russians. Well, since the Bashar al-Assad regime fell, the Russians are no longer there. there, the Syrians are really no longer there. I mean, the kind of radars that they have are rudimentary, and we do what we want to. We own Syrian skies, and now we own Iranian skies. Well, the Iranians let loose with what it was that they have. Now, according to reports, they have close to, or had at the beginning of the war, close to 2,000 of these missiles. These are missiles. These are guided missiles, as opposed to the rockets that hit Moreshet about 50 yards down the street. For I'm talking right now in Israel, that had about 200 pounds of TNT. These bad boys have between a half a ton and a ton of TNT, and the amount of damage that they can do is strikingly greater. Also, the ones that were being fired from Hezbollah, they were not guided. They went up, they went down, they went boom in the general direction in which they were launched. But these missiles that are being launched from Iran are guided. They are guided towards a target, and they will hit very close to that target, and therefore Israel has suffered. The Iranians have picked targets, while our missile defense system is doing stellar performance, taking out about 90% of what they fire at us. Still, 1 out of every 10 rockets that they fire at us leaks through. So last night, if they fired close to 100 missiles at us, we took out all of them, but about 11. The 11 that did fall caused a tremendous amount of damage and death. The Israeli Defense Forces came out today and said that what was fired at us was about 1/2 of what the Iranians wanted to fire at us. We're taking out not only the ballistic missiles, but we're also taking out the long pole in the tent, and that's the launcher. Every missile has to go on a launcher in order to be launched. So you can have a bagrillion missiles and only 13 launchers. That's going to limit the amount of firepower that you have. What we've been doing is we've been taking out those launchers, which enables the Iranians to, it really stifles the Iranians. They cannot do what they want to do. They cannot project the kind of power that they want to project. And things are only moving in our direction. Israel has complete air dominance over Western Iran. And the only reason we don't have air dominance over Eastern Iran is because they haven't gotten there yet, which means we fly where we want to fly. We hit what we want to hit. According to reports from what I read today, Tehran is going to turn into what Beirut was. Every day, Avichai Edri, who was the IDF spokesman in Arabic, he'd get on the internet and say, "Okay, you guys are living here. You move over here because we're going to blow up stuff here. We're going to blow up stuff there." And they were playing. They were just moving Beirut population, and it was terrible. And that is going to begin happening to Iranian population as of potentially today. This war is going to take, I would say, a couple of weeks, but it could take less if Iran's back is broken before. And it's something that's nonlinear. It's not that you go every day, you achieve a little bit more and you achieve a little bit more. Eventually, you're going to hit what's called a tipping point, and Iran will say, can't do it anymore. And can't do it anymore means either that they will surrender, and I find that highly unlikely, or that the Iranian opposition will stand up and take over. And that's what I find significantly more likely.
Ari, is there a third possibility? And that is that they come to a point where they're willing to, so to speak, agree to the conditions that the Trump administration set for them and sit at the table and negotiate. Is that a possibility?
Yes, I think that it's a definite possibility. It's perhaps more probable than the other two, given the fact that President Trump does not seem to want to fight in Iran. That could change at any minute. And my understanding now is that there's a tremendous amount of U.S. material that is making its way from the U.S. to Europe and the Persian Gulf as we speak. But this began because President Trump gave the Iranians 2 months in order to agree to his terms. And those terms were no nuclear enrichment, and there cannot be nuclear enrichment in Iran, because the minute you can enrich just a little bit, then you can enrich a lot bit, which means if I can enrich these nuclear uranium starts, there's two what's called isotopes of uranium. One is called uranium-238, and that's the kind that nobody cares about. And there's something called uranium-235, and that is the uranium that you can make a bomb out of. So all of the uranium in the world starts as uranium-238, and what you have to do is you have to enrich it so you can pull out the uranium-235. Well, usually it comes with less than 1% uranium-235, but if you have the proper equipment, as the Iranians do, which is primarily centrifuges, you can enrich it progressively and get it to a much more enriched state. In order to use it for a nuclear weapon, you need about 90% uranium-235. The Iranians have got it up to 60%. And to go to 90%, well, they can do that tomorrow afternoon. So we have to prevent them from having any kind of enrichment whatsoever. The Iranians, that was the point really that they broke off the negotiations with the U.S. The U.S. said no enrichment. The Iranians said yes enrichment. And well, 2 months went by, and the Trump administration said we're giving you 2 months. 2 months went by, and that night we attacked Iran. If the Iranians come back and say, all right, fine, you can take away everything we have, because the only thing that they have left is their rulership over the country, then I believe that we will be forced to take them up on their offer. I think that'll be terrible because I don't think that it is enforceable. I think it might be enforceable over a short period of time, but over a long period of time, people's attention sways. Oh, it's much more interesting in China or in Pakistan or India. And no one's really interested in what's happening in Iran anymore. And we're going to find ourselves in the same place we were 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So while I believe that, Rabbi Weil, what you're saying is potentially what's going to happen, more likely than not what's going to happen, I think that that would render our war, our victory, which we had been achieving over Iran, much less victorious.
In your opinion, what I've been told, and this is your analogy, is that imagine having a whole shelf of walnuts, but you don't have a nutcracker. The analogy there is you have all of these ballistic missiles, at this point, maybe not in the thousands, but in the hundreds. But if you don't have the launchers to shoot those ballistic missiles, then they can't do damage to the home front in Israel. The challenge of discovering, finding, and eliminating the launchers for large ballistic missiles relative to the challenge of finding, discovering launchers for, let's say, Hamas or Hezbollah rockets. Can you share that with us?
Oh, sure. And the launchers that are launching these Iranian bad boys, the ones that are firing at us now, are significantly larger than the ones that were firing the Hezbollah rockets. In fact, they were completely different because the Hezbollah rockets were typically launched in a salvo. They were much, much smaller. Some of them only 5, 10 feet high, and you could put them on the back of a truck and fire 6, 12, 24 of them at one time. These rockets are quite large. These are in the order of tons, and therefore they have to sit on the back of a truck, of a flatbed truck. You've seen these being taken out in the media. You've seen the Israelis finding these things and taking them out with air to surface weapons. So finding them is a lot easier because they stick out like a sore thumb. And the fact that we have complete air dominance over Western Iran, really, it's just a matter of time until we take them all out. Now, that said, they have a number of buried launchers, which is the same thing that the Lebanese had. So these are buried underground, and then a cover will come off, and they'll fire, and they can reload from underground. That's more difficult to take care of, and typically these are found in the proximity of missile bases where they have large quantities of these missiles. So that would be more difficult to take out. On the other hand, because we're such smart Israeli rocket scientists, we know exactly where each missile is launched from. And if you see enough missiles are launched from one place, then you can reach the conclusion that this is probably a missile storehouse that has underground launchers. So let's spend a lot of our time circling around there and dropping bombs on it. That's going to happen, or has been happening as well. We're whittling down their arsenal, we're whittling down their capability to use it, and there's not a bloody thing they can do to stop us.
You believe that the fact that, let's say, 350 projectiles may have been sent one night, last night was 100 projectiles, that already is a sign that we're eliminating some of the launchers?
I don't want to reach any conclusions because, I mean, it was the fact that they've been launching hundreds and now it's dropped down to 100 on one night. I mean, you can't draw any meaningful conclusions. It sure does look neat. We'll be much smarter tomorrow morning and the morning after if we see a continued drop in the a reduction in the number of missiles that they're firing at us. Then we can be safe in our knowledge that we have made a severe dent in their capability to use these things and in their stockpile of these things to begin with. So it's something that we have to wait and see.
One of the questions that everyone has, and this may be whatchamacallits, this may be off the record. So the question that we have is, we're assuming the one thing that works best against these ballistic missiles is the Arrow 3, that the Arrow 2, the THAAD, is not as successful against these significant ballistic missiles. Could you enlighten us, or is that something you're allowed to speak about?
Oh, sure. And we have different ways to address different threats. Arrow 3 is really the sharp end of the sword. That is, as far as we're concerned, our highest tech defense system, to the point that that intercepts bad boys when they're in outer space. And some of these do go into outer space. In fact, there was this really cool picture 2 nights ago. My brother-in-law sent me, but it was also in the news of this intercept in outer space, in which you see this fuzzy ball, which just gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer because it happened in outer space and there's no gravity pulling the shrapnel down. And it's really, really cool. It's really otherworldly. But because these bad boys do end up in outer space, the further you fly, then the higher you have to fly. Like throwing a ball, I always talk about it. The further you throw the ball, then the higher the ball's got to go in order to get where you want it to get. So the rule of thumb is that as far as you want to throw it, then it's going to go about a third of that height into the sky. So if they're firing at 700 kilometers, 1,200 miles at us, then it's going to go 400 miles in the sky, and that's well and truly in outer space. And that is the bailiwick of Arrow 3. It doesn't mean Arrow 2 can't be used. Doesn't mean THAAD can't be used. But Arrow 2 and THAAD, they live where there's air. Where there's no air, they don't work very well. They're not even created to work that well. So Arrow 3, the idea is Arrow 3 takes them out. And if Arrow 3 can't take them out, then Arrow 2 and THAAD, which is a U.S. system, Theater High Altitude Air Defense. It's a Lockheed Martin system, which the U.S. has positioned in Israel. As an aside, the THAAD radar, it's called the TPY-2. This is a radar that's been in Israel for a long time. This has been integrated into Israel's air defense system. So we've been using THAAD, except for the pointy end of the stick, for a very, very long time. And then also we have David Sling that's operating out there as well. So most of the missiles that you see being launched are Arrow 3s, but you will see Arrow 2s and THAADs being launched as well. And in the near future, you will see other American missiles being launched as well. America is bringing missile boats into the Mediterranean Sea. These missile boats are called Aegis, AEGIS, and these have fairly competent anti-missile capabilities. They have missiles called SM-3 and SM-6, and these can also add to just another arrow in the quiver. The more arrows you have in the quiver, the better. And also, another thing about Arrow 3 is it's really, really expensive. I mean, it's on the order of 10 mil a shot. So if we fired off 100 of them last night, so there just went $1 billion, and that's more than I make in a year. So that's a lot that went, and that's on one night salvo. So this is going to prove to be extremely costly to the Israeli taxpayer. But they're doing the job. 90%. You can't argue with that, can you?
No. Most of the ballistic missiles that we're seeing have left the atmosphere, go into the stratosphere, and come back. The timing we're averaging on those missiles, I should say the Iranians are averaging, is 15 and a half, 16 minutes till they land. Is that what you're seeing?
Something like that. That's when we get the first notice. They wake us from our bed. It used to be one shot. It's like a minute before, 2 minutes before the missiles landed, we're all going to die. And then they increased it to 10 minutes. We're all going to die. But then they said, we don't even know when it's launched. 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes is really the timeline. We don't know exactly where it's going to hit. So instead of waking everybody up and sending us to our bomb shelters, they wake us up and they say, we might send you to your bomb shelters, which is really a good idea because it allows you to walk around the house and get a cup of water, go to the bathroom, make a cup of coffee, check your email before you go into the safe room, into the bomb shelter. So what happens is that most of the country will get an alert 10 to 15 minutes before impact, which is right after the missiles have been launched. And as the missiles get closer to Israel, we can figure out, we can refine our estimate of where they are aimed and where they're going to fall. And we can tell certain people, you don't have to go to the bomb shelter this time. You can go back to bed. The fact that you've been woken up and your heart's beating at 120 beats a minute, neither here nor there. Everybody else has to go into the bomb shelter. And then about 2 minutes before the impact, you'll hear the alarm and then go into the bomb shelter and then close it. But you will have already been next to the bomb shelter. So walking into the bomb shelter and locking it, that's all you really need to do. And then you sit down and you start reciting Psalms and you wait and you hear the booms. Sometimes you hear a louder boom than other booms, and that means something is hit. A couple of nights ago, it was Friday night. We were in the bomb shelter 3 times on Friday night, and we heard the intercepts, and we get used to hearing them boom, boom, like that. In fact, the sound that one of these bad boys makes going off high in the atmosphere is about the same sound one of the smaller bad boys makes when it goes off closer to the ground. So we got used to those sounds, but then there was a sound which was a much stronger boom, probably one of the loudest booms I've ever heard. It shook the house, and that was one of those rockets, one of those missiles that had fallen with about 700 kilograms, but 3/4 of a ton of high explosives on Tamra, which is an Arab town about 5 miles away. And it took down a house and it killed 4 people from one family. And their only sin was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Very, very scary. There, but for the grace of God, go I.
The kind of impact damage. So we saw what happened in Bat Yam. On the other hand, where literally a whole building just crumbled. Other buildings have been able to take it to a better degree. Can you describe to us, the impact that this has upon hitting, what it does, and as well, we're making an assumption in this question. Please correct the assumption that a safe room is a safe room, but there's nothing that can protect against a direct hit.
I didn't want to say that, but once you brought it up, there is nothing that can protect against a direct hit. And this was not true with the missiles that were the rockets, I guess. Missile is a guided rocket. It was being launched by Hezbollah, was not guided, so it was a rocket. But the rockets that were being launched by Hezbollah, their warheads, the part of the missile that goes boom, that was small enough so that pretty much even a direct hit would not cause the bomb shelter to be destroyed itself. These were created in 1991 after the Iraqis fired very, very large Scud-B missiles at us, and so they were created to address that kind of threat. Since then, warheads have become stronger, but even so, they will stand anything but the most direct of hits of what was launched by Hezbollah. Not so for Iran. If one of these missiles with 500 to 1,000 kilo, half ton to 1 ton of explosives falls on it, then I don't care. I don't care what it's made of. It's you're not coming home for dinner that night. So it wasn't made to withstand direct hits. That's really what's causing most of the damage. You have a tremendous amount of explosive power, of blast, and you also have shrapnel. What's really causing the damage here, as opposed to, again, the Hezbollah stuff, which was shrapnel was causing most of the damage. Here, shrapnel is metal casing that just flies off. It's like knives. Here, just the sheer blast of that missile. That's what's causing most of the damage. It's blowing out windows, tearing apart houses that are in the vicinity of where the missile landed, and obviously creating a tremendous ditch, which what we saw in Ben Gurion Airport when one of these Yemeni things hit the ground. Unfortunately, chased all the airlines. All the airlines. We had just gotten them back, and now I don't know when anybody's coming back again. We are well and truly prisoners of Zion, Rabbi Weil. We aren't going anywhere for the next while, and friends of mine are out from RAFAEL. Friends of mine went to Europe last week on business, and they're sitting there in Athens waiting. There are more Israelis in Cyprus right now than there are Cypriots waiting to come home. So to answer your question, it's safer to be in a bomb shelter, but I cannot tell you that it is completely safe, because it's not. I don't tell this to my family.
The next question is, can you explain to us, maybe from a scientific point of view, why they're shooting at night? Now, as a layman, I would just assume the reason they're shooting at night is because you can camouflage the launchers to a better degree, than you can during the day. But is there, from a scientific point of view, it seems that the salvos have all been taking place at night.
I asked this very same question only yesterday, and I haven't come up with an answer. I remember 1991, the Gulf War, when the Iraqis were firing at us. The zombies only came out at night, and that's because they needed darkness, the cover of darkness, in order to take out their missiles and fire them. And you had coalition forces that were looking around, but that was the time when you really didn't see well at night. Today, that is no longer the case. Today, night, day, rain, gloom. It's like the U.S. Postal Service. Well, not a good example. It's like, but we will see 24/7 no matter what the weather is. So it really doesn't make a difference if it's day or if it's night. The only difference that it makes if it's day or if it's night, and I'm not entirely convinced that this is not the case, is that you have today an entire country that is suffering from sleep deprivation. I have not slept a night since Wednesday night. I grab a nap when I can. The fact that we have Grand Central Station here makes it more difficult. But Israelis are doing that. We're working, and because all places of employment are closed, makes it easier and closer proximity to a bed. But it could be that that's why they're firing at night, because it is having an impact on my quality of life. But if they think that because they're firing at night, it increases the chance of the missiles penetrating our defenses or decreases the chance of the IDF, the IAF finding them, they're seriously mistaken. And they're not idiots. The Iranians, they're not idiots. They made a lot of strategic mistakes, but they're not idiots. But I don't know why they're doing it at night. If you do find out why, please let me know.
Okay. Do you want to share with us any last words in terms of?
Wasn't very well phrased. Considering we just spoke about how safe you are or aren't in a
Yeah,
bomb shelter. Closing
I'm
words,
sorry.
closing words.
Closing words. I apologize.
North.
Closing words in terms of the missile defense system and where you could see this going. And I'll tell you why I'm asking that question. My understanding is that Israel, specifically those in the missile defense, they learn from every rocket that comes through, from every rocket that breaches the system. They learn from that, and that what happens is eventually the odds of defending against these rockets only goes up. We've seen that in other wars. This is the first time that we've seen day after day countless barrages of these ballistic missiles. Share with us, your closing remarks on that.
So let me close out on that. And there's something else I want to close out on as well. Iron Dome, we started out in 2011. We were doing between 70 and 80%. That was our success rate. And that was okay because no one had the faintest idea what kind of rate of success we'd have because no one had really ever done that sort of stuff before. But over years, of learning from our success and learning from error, and Israel and my firm belief that Israel is the startup nation because we are unafraid to fail and learn from our failures. We don't only succeed, but we're unafraid to fail as well. We've bumped up that percentage of success to greater than 90% to nearly 95%. And until this war, our use of other systems, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, and even THAAD. If I'm not mistaken, THAAD's first operational intercept was only a week or two ago in Israel of a Yemeni missile. So I mean, we're learning new things about our new systems, and if we're doing 90% now, then perhaps we'll ratchet it up to 95%. Everybody who's in the business would believe that you're going to get better. And if you're starting at 90, so 95% is a realistic estimate. 100% is never a realistic estimate. And therefore, Israel will continue to be battered by these missiles. Every 100 that they launch, between 5 and 10 are going to land. And the damage that they do is horrific. And therefore we need to protect ourselves, and we need to end this as soon as possible. And we need to continue whittling away at their capability to do damage. We're never going to be able to whittle away at their desire to do damage. I think that this is a regime that's going to go down with the ship, because that's the nature of the radical Islamic beast. And therefore, we have to make sure that it is physically more and more difficult for them to launch bad boys at us. What I wanted to close on is, if you take a look at this war and take a look at the war against Hezbollah that began on September the 18th, after Israel had been fighting with Hezbollah pretty much since October the 7th, October the 8th, 2023, until September 18th, 2024, when Operation Grim Reaper went into effect. And then, like a house of cards, Hezbollah fell. We took out their leadership, took out their military leadership. We began bombing the Dahiya. We began pushing them away from the border, to the point now that Hezbollah is being absorbed into the Lebanese populace. It is no longer a fighting force. That was a war that we had planned on fighting. And that was a war that we had a drawer, and you open up the drawer and you pull out the plans and you implement the plans. These plans had been they had been developed, they had been approved, they had been simulated, they had been reapproved and re-simulated, and these were the best plans. We took them out and we implemented it, and we implemented it perfectly, and we took out Hezbollah. We did the exact same thing to the Iranians. I mean, what we did has been in the planning stages for years. And we implemented a plan that was that was planned and replanned and simulated and re-simulated, and we're doing what we expected to do with much greater success. I mean, thank God, with a tremendous amount of success. There's always a dollop of success that comes from God Almighty Himself, clearly. But we are doing something that we planned. Compare this to Gaza. Nobody had ever planned on going into Gaza. No one had planned on Hamas breaching the walls. No one had ever planned a full-scale invasion on Gaza, which is why over the last year and a half we have been trying to figure out what to do, not only because our hands in certain cases were being held by the U.S. administration, but because we really didn't know what to do. And we were really trying something and, cut and try. Will this work? No. Will that work? Yeah, it worked pretty well. Let's do more of that. There is a moral to this story, and the moral to this story is that we do not have, as a country, the luxury of poo-pooing any of those that might do us harm. We cannot poo-poo any of Iran's proxies, any countries that could become belligerent in the near future, and their potential proxies in the near future. We have to do what we did for Iran and what we did for Hezbollah and what we did not do for Gaza. We have to be prepared. And if it's good enough for the Boy Scouts, it's certainly good enough for the state of Israel. Because when we are prepared and when we execute and when God Almighty helps us out, there's nothing that can stop us.
Ari, we want to thank you. Really, really want to thank you. And please stay safe. And what we've seen in the last 4 days is nothing short of miraculous in terms of the success of Israel, of the IAF, of the IDF. And the reality is, I think we're probably looking at, who knows, tomorrow will be a different assessment, but we're looking at weeks. They've taken 4 decades to develop this kind of infrastructure, horrific, heinous infrastructure throughout the length and breadth of Iran. You can't eliminate that in 4 days. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of firepower, and we're in the middle of a war. Thank you.
Thank you.